excited to have with me Tony Downs, who's with Data Connection. Tony, how are you? Fantastic. So, got a lot of questions for you. I'm curious, just before we get started, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about your company so they can get up to speed?
Well, Data Connection is we're UK-based, essentially a software company. And our main line of business is portable protocol code. So we've been selling different varieties of protocol code, from ATM through MPLS, voice over IP, different variants of voice over IP, mainly to manufacturers. So you say sell a stack to a manufacturer, they incorporate it into the product, and that helps them avoid using scarce engineering resource to have to build it themselves, and it's time to market as well.
So I know you came up with a product maybe 3-4 years ago. It was a session border control product. Can you tell us a little bit about what that product is and how it's doing?
It's doing great. I mean, this is a slight departure in that our traditional products are what you might think of as lower level communication stacks. Right. The session border controller is more of a hybrid. It operates at multiple levels. So there is some of our existing stacks are in our session border controller products, such as the SIP stack and the MGCP megacode stack. But then there's a lot of higher level pseudo application function to do, say, call control, routing, policy management. So it's a substantially bigger product than some of our existing products, perhaps an order of magnitude larger.
Sure.
But it is definitely filling a need. There are quite a wide variety of existing customers and also new OEM customers who want to deploy a session border controller. And the make versus buy argument is even more compelling just because it is so much larger. So if you want to build a session border controller from scratch, it's a huge undertaking. And it makes much more sense to go out and buy.
And one of your coworkers even explained it a few years back, or maybe a year back to me, that rather than going and buying an SBC company, you would be able to just purchase the intellectual property, the software from your company. Essentially,
we license software, and then you have the rights as the manufacturer to just embed that in your product and redistribute. So, and the route of buying an SBC company isn't necessarily foolproof. Some of the router vendors like Juniper Board,
Gore,
right? So you buy a company, you don't necessarily get all the intellectual property, or the engineers constitute some of the intellectual property and they leave. It can be quite hard to do that successfully and incorporate it in your product line.
Sure, and acquisitions don't always turn out well. So that's a very good point that you just made. So what I really am interested about, your company sits kind of at the head of just what's next and the innovation. What do you see in terms of adoption from your customers? What do you see maybe that might be surprising to the viewers in terms of the growth curve?
Session border controllers, I think, have been it's a classic curve that everybody shows for almost every product in a segment, which is very flat and then it takes off.
So hockey stick, like growth.
Growth. Now, there's always this debate about where you are, and you're often on the flat section for much longer than you expect.
Of course, always.
And there is a delay between, say, our having product available, our customers buying it, integrating it, getting it through carrier trials. That can be quite a long process, a number of years. So we've seen, at our point in the chain, we've seen huge interest and increasingly huge take-up. So the session border controller product is now a big slice of our business. But I think it's still the case that our customers are not selling very many yet. I think they're still at the point where they're doing carrier trials. The carriers are firming up their requirements. There's still shifting requirements in this too, which we're having to respond to, our customers are having to respond to. But I judge that the requirement is clearly there, and that the carriers will deploy in big numbers soon.
Now, if you talk to a company like an Acme Packet, who's arguably one of the leaders, if not the leader in the space, they'll tell you that they are adding features and features and features, and some of the recent conversations I've had with execs of the company, it's bewildering. It's almost impossible to cover right about all of the features that they continue to add. Is the feature war going to be something that we're going to see more of, and does that kind of pit you as a supplier to some of these other vendors against some of the more mature session border control vendors?
I mean, we're in a feature war too, and that's being driven partly by the install base. Acme Packet is a classic example. So if we're selling to a computer manufacturer, a router manufacturer, they feel that when they get to market, they have to be equivalent, nearly, to Acme Packet. There mustn't be any substantial difference. So that places huge feature requirements on us for equivalence. The other thing that's driving feature requirements is that the carriers are coming up with new requirements because networks are so diverse. Things you might have to do in one network, go to a separate network, and you have to do something different. So here's a new requirement. Carriers run their networks in different ways, so you get different requirements to say how topology hiding works, how much they want to hide, how much they don't care about. And then you have IMS, which again is a moving target.
And do you see anything, not to get sidetracked here, but it's so important, and many of my readers I know are constantly asking me what's happening with IMS. What are your thoughts from your perspective?
My thoughts are major carriers are very committed to it, and they fully intend to deploy IMS-like architectures. And when they send out RFIs or RFPs, they have a long list, sometimes block copied from the standards. You can really see, oh yeah, I saw what page they got that from. And therefore our customers pass those requirements to us, and that's another part of our feature chase. We're chasing those requirements all the time. I still judge at the moment they haven't deployed much, partly because the IMS standards have been relatively immature for quite a while. It's taken quite a while for them to develop the standards to the point where the level of function inherent in the architecture is equivalent with the kind of function they already have deployed. So that this broad brush approach and they've been filling in lots of detail. I think we're at the point where you're starting, again, there's a lead time. Sometime in the next few years, you will start to see IMS compliant deployments in existing networks. But then they have to interoperate with the pre-existing network too.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's definitely a requirement, and I think it will happen. Just it's another hockey stick problem.
Sure, and now you've got me onto another issue which is fascinating to me, and that is excuse me, SIP protocols and just SIP standards, and trying to get SIP devices from different manufacturers to interoperate. And now you take that and you almost have to exponentially multiply the problem as you've got IMS and all the different pieces in IMS architecture, and getting those pieces to work together. I mean, what do you see happening first with SIP, and then second just with disparate pieces of IMS equipment?
SIP is at a point where it's pretty stable. I mean, there's still some change around the periphery, but there is certainly, because of the degree of change over the last, say, 7 or 8 years, you definitely